of our family than we know about. And that is the evil one who makes himself at home.
Dr. Tony Evans says evicting the devil is ultimately a father's responsibility.
Our job as parents is to escort the children into the future. That means learning what it means to lead as a man.
This is The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans, author, speaker, senior pastor of Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship in Dallas, Texas, and president of the Urban Alternative. More and more children are growing up without fathers in the home these days, and Dr. Evans says that many of the problems we're experiencing in society can be traced back to that problem. Let's join him as he talks about what we can do to change direction.
The saga of a nation is the saga of its families written large. When the family breaks down, everything that's supposed to be built on that sacred foundation crumbles with it. And so we are now reaping the devastation of family disintegration. And now we're living in a day when it's normal not to have a nuclear family as it was created to be. It's abnormal to see one. It's not normal anymore, the norm to see husbands and wives, fathers and mothers. Whole ministries have to now be reconstructed to deal with this reality that we're having to face. And we must deal with it while at the same time trying to get back to what God had in mind. We're living in the day of the adultification of children, when now children are raising parents rather than parents raising children. It reminds me of the lady who was in the grocery store, and she had a little girl with her, and she said very sternly, "Suzanne, stop it." "Suzanne, did you hear what I said?" "I said, stop it." "Suzanne, if you keep this up, you're going to get hurt." "Suzanne, listen to me." I said, stop it. Well, the proprietor of the store was quite impressed that he was seeing a mother speaking in disciplinary terms. So he came to the little girl and he patted her on the hand and he said, "So your name's Suzanne?" The mother said, "No, my name's Suzanne. That's Betty. I'm trying to control myself." Because we're living in a day when younger and younger and younger children are in control. But what's happening downstream is because there's been a breakdown upstream. And that is because we have misunderstood, misdefined, misapplied the principle of the family, and in particular today, the role of parents. The Bible says in Isaiah chapter 3, verses 4 and 5, it says, "And there was the deterioration in the culture as the children lived in rebellion against their elders." And so what we're having today is children and youth rebellion because there's been a breakdown upstream. And so I want to now talk to you about raising kingdom kids. If you have children, this will inform what you do with them for the place you are now. If you don't have them, this will try to give you a framework for when you do have them, or even the influence that you may have over nieces or nephews or other young people in your scope or sphere of responsibility. Let's start at the top. Why does God want you to have kids in the first place? Let me tell you why he is not trying to get you to have kids. He's not trying to get you to have kids so you can have lookalikes. That's not his goal. In fact, in some of our cases, it's better if they don't look like us. But the goal of parenting is not to have lookalikes. You see in these verses, he says, raise them in the fear of the Lord. Remember, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth with children. But why? Because man was created in the image of God. So the goal of having children is the replication of God's image, not just the replication of your image. The role of children was for God to reproduce himself through the process of childbearing, through the imprint of parenting, so that God would become replicated all over the earth. So the purpose of children was the replication of God and the advancement of God's kingdom in history. Man was created in the image of God. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth with my image. It would be the domination of the image of God through the expansion of family due to the birth of children out of a relationship of marriage. That's how God set it up. That's how God wanted it to go. But now children are there for a convenience, and often they become an inconvenience. In fact, that tells you even how many children you should have. I get this question often. How many children does God want me to have? Answer is real simple. As many as you can put the divine imprint on. Because the goal of childbearing is the replication of the image of God in history for the advancement of his kingdom. That is the reason he created the procreation aspect of family. God told his people in Jeremiah 29, he says, I want you to multiply there and do not decrease in your numbers. Do not stop having children, even though you're in a pagan place called Babylon. So while the unrighteous are aborting their future, you expand the kingdom of God so that the unrighteous wind up getting outnumbered. Now, when you define childbearing, parenting, and family along that line, it changes the equation of why you're doing it. It's more than Gucci goo. And isn't he or she cute? Because it won't be too long before you discover when their legs get longer, their wings get shorter. And the little angel has become a little devil. And so family was given for the expansion of God's rule in history. God set up a hierarchical pattern. He set up a hierarchical plan. God is over Christ. Christ is over every man. A man is over a woman. And then he says today, and parents are over children. He tells you why else? Because he tells you in verse 3 that they may live long on the earth. Parents get to affect how long their children live. And if not how long they live, how well they live. It says, and it will go well with you, and you shall live long on the earth if you have the right relationship with parents. So for you teenagers who are listening to the sound of my voice, it is absolutely critical that you respond properly to your parents so you live to fulfill your fully ordained days and don't die before your time. It is also critical that you appropriately respond to your parents so that it will go well with you. So that God will answer your prayers, see your life through, govern your future because you have related to your parents. But that means, parents, you got to be the kind of person they can relate to. That means operating under God's hierarchical chain of command. Because remember, Satan slithered in, he broke the chain. When you break the chain, you invite the devil, and that's why we got hell in our homes. Men are not under God, women are not under men, children are not under parents, and so the devil is having a heyday. Because once you flip this thing, once you tweak it, twist it, flip it, and turn it, the devil doesn't have to be invited in. The flipping is an invitation. And so many of us have one more member of our family than we know about. And that is the evil one who makes himself at home, which is why there's World War III when the family is there on an ongoing basis. And so the family exists for the replication of God. In fact, God tells in 1 Timothy one reason why women ought to have babies, and that is to get the devil back, to pay him back for what he did in the Garden of Eden. He messed women up in the Garden of Eden. So Paul says, I want you to have some babies, raise them as godly seed, and get back at him. It is a response to the evil. So children have a very spiritual reason for existence, not just a biological, physiological, or familial reason for their existence. They are to transfer a theocentric, God-centered worldview, which why he says, raise them in the Lord. That is, let the glasses that they wear, we call that a worldview, it's the lens through which you view life, be constructed by the parents as they transfer to the children that which they have gotten from the Lord. But if parents haven't gotten anything, they can't give anything. So we are to transfer to them what we have gotten from the Lord. And so now he gives the responsibility. He says in verse 4, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up. All right, we ready for a curveball kingdom, men? Here's a curveball kingdom, man. In the Bible, not talking about in the culture, not talking about what you learn on television, not talking about what your homies say. In the Bible. Somebody say in the Bible. The father raises the children, not the mother. I'm talking about the Bible now. You saw verse 4 says, fathers bring them up. In the Bible, the father is responsible for the raising of the children, not the mother. Okay? So let's get this straight. And you ain't going to hear this downtown. They ain't going to tell you this. Fathers. Now, ladies, he's not excluding the mother because he's already said in the first verse, children obey your parents, plural. So that's a mother and a father. But the father was ultimately responsible.
Dr. Evans will have more to say about what that responsibility looks like when he continues our message after this.
In a healthy marriage, you pray with your spouse and at other times for your spouse. But when things get to the point when you only pray about your spouse, Dr. Tony Evans says it's time to flip the script before it's too late. That's why he wrote Prayers for Victory in Marriage. This isn't a book full of magic words you can recite to make everything instantly better. It's a collection of powerful principles about how the armor of God equips you to defend your family and fight for the most important relationship you have on earth. Along the way, you'll learn how to make the arguing stop, how to give and receive forgiveness, how to communicate more effectively, how to meet each other's needs, and much more. And each section ends with practical examples of prayers that get right to the heart of the matter. Consistent, faithful prayer is the best investment you can make in your marriage. So get your copy of Prayers for Victory in Marriage, available now at tonyevans.org.
Request your copy today, and it's yours as our thank you gift when you make any contribution to help us keep Tony's teaching on this station. Again, that's tonyevans.org, or call our 24-hour resource center at 1-800-800-3222 before this limited time offer runs out. That's 1-800-800-3222. Well, time to get back to today's lesson now. Here's Dr. Evans.
The mother has one job. Every woman who's a wife here, you only have one job when it comes to child rearing. Help. You're a helpmate. So you are to fill in the gaps when he can't be there. He's out working, he's out bringing in the bread, whatever. You are to fill in the gap. But the man is responsible for the bringing up of the children. So when a wife says, wait till your daddy get home, that's exactly what she should be saying, because the buck stops here. It stops with the man. If you're a messed up man, then you're not going to raise the kids properly. If your wife has to wake you up and ask you, are you going to church today? If she having to ask you, will you pray with the kids? If she having to ask you, are you going to work today? If she got to do that, then that means you're not raising the kids. But I understand that problem because many men have not been raised themselves. So they're siren kids, and the younger this happens, where they're not prepared to take care of them, then you got chaos. Fathers, raise your kids. Now, in a biblical worldview, the Bible was written during the New Testament, during the Roman era. And so this is why Paul has to say that. Because back in Rome, the father had the power of life and death. See, if the father was having his first child and he wanted a boy, as most men do, he wanted a boy first, and that woman gave birth to a girl, he could get the baby thrown away because he wants a boy. So Christianity comes along, and Paul says to the church, that's not how we roll. We don't throw away children, we raise them. So the father had the power of life and death in Roman days. So he has to explain to fathers, no, this is how we do it as Christian men, he says. Fathers, bring up your children. Now, I know we live in a day where it says it takes a village to raise a kid. No. How about getting a mom and daddy at home? In fact, if you turn your kids over to the village today, they're going to be tore up by the village. No, it takes a mother and a father. Now, I understand. I am talking to a lot of homes here that don't have a father. They have a mother. And if you are a mother without a father, you be the best mother you can be and trust God to fill in the gaps. But since the father was so much of a key, it is no wonder that the devil is keeping dad out of the house. He's keeping the dad out of the house. He's getting the dad to sire children, but then not marry the mother. He's getting the dad to divorce the mother so that she's still stuck most of the time with the kids. He's getting the dad, he still may be home, but not taking care of business, so he might as well not be a father because he's a deadbeat dad, because the devil knows if he can keep the dad out the picture, he can become the dad. He can become the dominant influencer of the boys, of the girls, of the young men, of the young ladies. And he can allow you to outsource parenting to the television, to the government, to the babysitter. You can outsource it and let somebody else worry about it. And so we're in a day of parental outsourcing. So here's what you need to know, fellas, because he says fathers, not because he's excluding the mother, but because childbearing, child-raising responsibility belongs to the father, because the father is the head. So you want to be the man, you got to take the responsibility because it's on your shoulders and mine. Exodus 20, verses 5 and 6 says that I will visit the iniquity of the father to the children, to the third and fourth generation. So when you neglect fatherhood, parenting in general, fatherhood in particular, you're not only messing up your kids, you're messing up your kids' kids and your kids' kids' kids to the third and fourth generation. So that's why we've got a generational curse that we're dealing with that we need to overcome, because your daddy messed up you messed up your son is going to mess up his son, and we got chaos in society. There used to be a time when a man could walk down the street and young boys would move to the sidewalk. Now men move to the sidewalk because they're scared of the young boys who are on the sidewalk, because we've raised a generation of terrorists. Why? Because they never got raised right at home, so they're acting a fool in society. And it's happening on every level. Sometimes it can be hidden by money or high-class living, but we're seeing chaos. You scared to send your kids to school today? Because in some places you don't even know if they're going to come home. But there is a breakdown upstream of the family. Fathers are the representative head. The buck stops here. You know, I walk through a metal detector, it goes beep, 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 because I got keys in my pocket. I back up, take my keys out, and I go back through. But sometimes I walk through, I got my keys in my pocket, it doesn't beep. The magnetometer doesn't beep. That's because magnetometers have to be set. You can set it real sensitive or not so sensitive, and that'll determine how quickly it beeps. We got a generation of young people today whose consciences don't beep. That's because they've never been set. And they're supposed to be set. The sensitivity is supposed to be set by the mother and the father, led by the father, but by the mother and the father, so that they beep. Because you've given them a standard, because you've raised them in the sphere of the Lord. That is, you've given them a divine frame of reference. That is the father's job, supported by his chief assistant, the mother, for the fulfilling of the raising of kids. We've said this before, let's say it again. The way a biblical father raised his kids and led his family was around the table. Every man here who has a family can lead his family 1 hour a day. That's all you need. Maybe an hour and a half, depending on the age of your kids, but you got to be at the table. Because the table wasn't just for eating. The table was for leading around food. Since you had to eat anyway, he would use the table for leading. In fact, the wife and the kids would be standing up because they wouldn't even sit down until the father came. The father comes to the head of the table. And now the head is there. Now everybody can take their seats. In fact, you didn't show the boys how to pull out the chairs for their sister so that they learn how to treat women in the early part of their lives. Then you pulled out the chair for your wife so that everybody is learning. Then the father would sit down. Then the father would say grace or have somebody else say grace. They would hold hands. Then he would pray a blessing over each of his children. He would have family devotions. He found out who was doing work, who was not behaving, who was messing up, how you doing in school, who you playing with. He would find out everything that's going on without ever leaving the dinner table. But to do that, you got to turn off the radio, turn off the television, put down the phone, and you got to take your seat at the head of the table. He says, fathers, this is on you. With the mother, yes. But if we're going to turn the tide, we've got to go back upstream because we can't pull all of these folk out of the water who are drowning. Because too many of these children are having to raise themselves. Or they've got a mother who's so stretched from having to work, having to do homework, no support, she's doing the best she can, but she is strictly overwhelmed. And when the boy gets to be a teenager and now she can't threaten him anymore because he's bigger than she is, stronger than she is stuck. Because somebody had enough manhood to lay down with her, but not enough manhood to raise the kid that he helped give birth to. We're living in a day of catastrophe unless this thing is turned around and we're training the next generation of boys and girls and then young men and young women. Our job as parents is to escort the children into the future. And that means learning what it means to lead as a man. Maybe you don't know. Maybe we don't know. Maybe I didn't have a daddy. Maybe I was raised with a mother. So I've grown up to be a man just like my mom. Because I was raised with her, so I don't know. Okay, but when you don't know something that you need to do, you go learn it. You go learn it. Now, that means we've got to supply the information, but you go learn it. You don't just say, I don't know, and I ain't have a dad. All right, now we got that. But now that you know you don't know, which is the first thing you need to know, is what you don't know, is now go learn what it means to know it. Take the responsibility for learning what it means to operate under the rule of God.
Dr. Tony Evans, talking about the importance of raising children God's way. As always, if you'd like a copy of today's message, we'll be glad to tell you more when you ask about the title, Raising Kingdom Kids. Better yet, check into getting all 6 lessons in our current series called The Kingdom Family, an eye-opening look at God's original plan for life in the home and why following that plan may be the only way to keep our country from falling apart. You'll find it featured right now on our website, tonyevans.org. along with the book I told you about earlier, Prayers for Victory in Marriage. Remember, we're offering this brand new resource as our thank you gift when you support The Alternative with a donation of any size. Your faithful, generous contributions are the only way we can continue bringing Tony's teaching your way and continue building up local churches and leaders. So be sure to visit us at tonyevans.org right away to request your copy of Prayers for Victory in Marriage before time runs out. Again, that's tonyevans.org. Or call us day or night at 1-800-800-3222 and let one of our resource team members help you. That's 1-800-800-3222. Tomorrow, more from Dr. Evans on raising kingdom kids, with specifics on dealing with rebellious teenagers and advice for single moms with out-of-control boys. I hope you'll be with us. The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans is brought to you by the Urban Alternative and is made possible by the generous contributions of listeners like you.